Please forgive me for being like this. Goodbye. The day after giving birth, what was beside my pillow was a suicide note from my husband. The shock was too much for me, just after childbirth, and my mind went blank. Then, my husband's shoes were found at the top of a cliff. Since then, I've been barely getting by, just holding my daughter and living day by day, and before I knew it, 5 years had passed. Now, I find myself saved by the growing smile of my daughter, but something shocking happened when I went to a friend's wedding. Incredibly, standing next to the bride was my husband. Dressed in a tuxedo, he stood there with the same smile as before. He was supposed to have thrown himself into the sea, so why here? From there, I came to learn an unexpected truth, and as a result, his life spiraled downward. 5 years ago, at 35, I was working as a nail technician with a steady clientele. I dreamed of owning my own shop one day, saving up money while working hard. But, preoccupied with work, my best friend Hannah, concerned about my lack of a boyfriend, invited me to a mixer. "Mia, you're not giving up on marriage or kids, right? Then, you need to look for some encounters," she said. Encouraged by her, a friend since high school, I decided to give it a try. And that's where my life took a significant turn. Unexpectedly, I met someone wonderful. We hit it off as if we had known each other for years, and quickly started dating. His name was Mike, a 38-year-old office worker. Both in our late 30s, we were dating with marriage in mind, but before half a year had passed, I found out I was pregnant. "Mike, I think I'm pregnant." "What? Seriously?" The moment I told him, Mike seemed startled, but then he smiled and hugged me. We decided to have the wedding after the baby was born, settling to live together and register our marriage first. However, during the move, my morning sickness worsened, rendering me bedridden. "We should register our marriage soon. Just sign the marriage certificate, and I'll submit it to the city hall." "I wanted to go together, sorry." "Don't worry, just rest for the baby's sake." I was always enveloped by his kindness. Yet, there was one thing that worried me. My parents. Living in a rural area, my parents, due to their job and concern about public image, used to press me about marriage every time we met. I had stopped contacting them to avoid this, but announcing a shotgun wedding would likely make them grim. As expected, when I reached out, my father yelled, "Don't come back home, it's disgraceful." Though I anticipated it, this still depressed me, adding to my daily nausea and gloom. Gradually, I took more time off work, spending most days in bed, unable to do housework, eating the bare minimum. "Sorry, I couldn't do anything around the house again today." "Again? Really?" As days passed, Mike, once kind, began to change. Even though this was supposed to be the happy time of our newlywed life, expecting a baby, I couldn't help feeling rushed and inadequate. I might not be cut out to be a good wife or mother. Every day, I lay in bed, crying, battling nausea. It was truly hellish. And then, things started to worsen. Mike began coming home late, his time at home diminishing. Moreover, there was no deposit from Mike for rent when the due date arrived. When we started living together, we agreed to split the rent, and I signed the lease so it would come out of my account, but before I knew it, there hadn't been a single transfer. "Hey, haven't you forgotten to deposit the rent? What's going on with the money? Just wait a bit longer. This month, there have been a lot of drinks and entertainment. I'm really pinched with expenses." Every time I checked, he would delay the payment, and in the end, it was almost like I was the one paying all the rent. Moreover, a few days before payday, he started asking me to lend him money more frequently. "But I'm not able to work right now, and considering the future, I really want to save my money." Due to severe morning sickness, I had almost stopped working and had reluctantly started dipping into my savings intended for opening a nail salon. But I really wanted to save that money. The thing is, there were sudden fancy dinners and entertainment this month, so I'm really in a pinch. But then, shouldn't that be covered by the company's expenses? It's not that simple. Besides, if I can secure this deal now, it'll significantly affect my future promotions. Please understand. If he got a promotion and his income increased, he could support the family better, so I had no choice but to nod when he said he was working hard for us. But then, I noticed an unfamiliar watch on Mike's arm. Hey, where did you get that watch? Noticed? Cool, isn't it? I've been eyeing this watch for a while. He showed it off as if he was a child bragging about a treasure. No, that's not the point. How much did it cost? What's the big deal? I bought it with my own money, stop nagging. Despite me paying the rent and even lending him money, I wondered what he was thinking. I couldn't help but snap back at him. Before spending money on things like that, you should consult me. You're going to be a father soon. I rarely raise my voice, but perhaps because I did, Mike looked surprised and then sheepishly apologized. Sorry, I'll make sure to do better from now on, okay? Seeing Mike sincerely apologize, I couldn't help but feel a vague sense of unease about the future. After that, my husband started coming home less frequently. And as my pregnancy advanced to the later stages, an unexpected situation occurred during a prenatal checkup. What? Hospitalized? Now? I was told at the checkup that I'm at risk of premature birth. There were still about 2 months until my due date, but the doctor recommended hospitalization to ensure the baby stays in as long as possible. I was shocked by the sudden news, but I was determined to do everything to protect my baby, so I prepared myself for a long hospital stay. While confined to the hospital bed, I looked forward to the birth of my baby, but the days of doing nothing but resting were admittedly dull. However, my salvation during this time was my best friend, Hannah, who frequently visited me. She's currently working at a detective agency specializing in infidelity investigations and would share work stories within acceptable limits, making me laugh. Infidelity always gets discovered, doesn't it? Really? When I fell silent, Hannah leaned in and asked, "Could it be that Mike is having an affair?" It's not like that, but... I ended up spilling all the things that had been bothering me. Leaving the house that often, Mike seems suspicious. Hannah murmured with a stern face, and I felt a sense of realization. I had been doubting him deep down, but perhaps I was looking away. Just to be sure, have you checked if the marriage registration was properly filed? What? No, I haven't. But surely. Hannah's unexpected comment took me by surprise. I had never doubted him to that extent. Sometimes, there are men like that. I don't know if Mike is the same, but it's better to check. Torn between doubting my husband and wanting to clear up the nagging doubts, I was undecided. Then, Hannah suddenly stood up. I can check on your behalf at the city hall. It's better to clarify these things. She had me fill out the documents needed for the power of attorney and then, with a swift grab of her bag, left the hospital room. It's okay. The marriage certificate must have been filed. Just knowing that will make me feel better. As I waited, reassuring myself, Hannah returned in less than an hour. Here. She handed me a document showing my family register, but there was no mention of my marriage to Mike. What? Then, why don't you check with him yourself? So, I decided to ask him when he showed up in the hospital room the next day. When he arrived, he was all smiles as usual. Despite my trembling heart, I knew I had to clear things up for the sake of our child and broached the topic. Hey, you filed the marriage certificate, right? Huh? He suddenly changed color, fell silent, and seemed to ponder. After a while, he finally spoke. Truth is, I wanted to file it together with Mia, so I stopped. He had gone to the office but then hesitated, thinking I would soon recover. Then you should have told me right away. Yeah, but then things got a bit complicated. Apparently, he got entangled in some financial trouble, leading to a situation where we couldn't even pay our rent. To become a father and feel so helpless. I thought I should sort this out before talking to you about it. I couldn't say anything to his somber face. Sorry for making you feel insecure, especially with our child on the way. At that moment, all I could do was stroke the back of Mike as he began to cry. He had been suffering in silence. As his wife, I need to support him. Afterwards, Mike seldom visited and stopped replying to my messages. Maybe he was too ashamed to see me for a while, so I decided not to push him. Despite everything, my belly grew, and the day of childbirth arrived. Labor pains started in the middle of the night, and by morning, my daughter was born, a healthy baby weighing over 6.6 pounds. Although Mike came when I called, he seemed distant and avoided eye contact. Though I was concerned, the sheer joy of overcoming a tumultuous night and intense pain made everything else fade away. Holding my small, powerless child, I was overwhelmed with indescribable emotions and tears. "I'm so happy you were born safely." Mike held his daughter, his face a mixture of emotions. The next day, what lay beside my pillow was a suicide note from my husband. To Mia. "You must be surprised by this sudden letter, but these are my true feelings." The letter was filled with his agonizing cries. At that time, he hadn't made things clear, but it turned out he had been scammed and lost all our savings, and was now being chased by debt collectors. Considering the future of our unborn child and family, he saw no other way out. "I think I'll only cause trouble if I stay alive. So, I'm planning to jump off a well-known cliff. Please forgive me. Goodbye." Those last words left me in shock, especially in my vulnerable postpartum state. When I hurriedly consulted the police, Mike's shoes were found at a famous cliff, presumed to have jumped into the sea, and I broke down in tears. But even after a search, my husband's body was never found. Mike's whereabouts remained unknown, and I filed a missing person report, still believing he would return. Holding on to a sliver of hope, 5 years have passed in what seems like a blink of an eye. During this time, holding my newborn daughter, I had no choice but to live with all my might. Fortunately, when I informed my parents about the birth, they came to visit, and we reconciled, and since then, they have been a great help. Thanks to my parents doting on their granddaughter, I've managed to survive as a single mother. Now, I'm balancing parenting and work, striving every day towards opening my dream store. Hannah also comes over often, taking me and my daughter out shopping or for outings, providing much-needed support. During that time, I received an invitation from Mona, a friend from high school. Back in high school, she, Hannah, and I always used to hang out together. Mona, a daughter of a corporate president, had moved to Hawaii after graduating high school due to her parents' business, and since then, we had lost touch. So, I was quite surprised when, out of the blue, I received an invitation to her wedding ceremony back here. "Mona is getting married. I wonder who the lucky guy is." Hannah contacted me excitedly, but I had no idea either. "Maybe someone she met over there, or possibly some corporate heir." We were looking forward to seeing our friend after such a long time. On the day of the wedding, when we arrived at the venue, I had to admit, the place and decorations were so lavish that they reaffirmed Mona's status as a corporate heiress. Come to think of it, Mike was also working for a company under this group. Suddenly, that memory crossed my mind, but as the lights dimmed and music started to play, the doors of the venue were spotlighted and slowly opened. Seeing Mona after such a long time, she looked as unchanged as ever, her smile brightening the surroundings like spring sunshine coaxing the flowers to bloom. But the moment I saw the groom standing next to her, my heart froze. "What? Mike?" The man standing next to Mona was my husband, who was supposed to have disappeared after jumping into the sea the day after our daughter was born. How? How is he here? And with Mona of all people? I never imagined we'd reunite under these circumstances. Dressed in a tuxedo, he stood there with the same smile as before, leaving me in complete shock. What on earth? I was dumbfounded, feeling as though I was seeing a ghost, when Hannah, who works at a detective agency, spoke up. Isn't that Mike? I was just thinking the same thing. But that laugh, it's exactly like Mike's. He has this little habit of lifting the left corner of his lip. I'm sure it's him. If Hannah, who works in investigation, says so, then there's no doubt in my mind that it was my husband. What does this mean? He jumped into the sea, didn't he? Yes, that's right. It's unbelievable, but if that suicide note was a lie, then it's not impossible. I was overwhelmed with a desire to confront him and uncover the truth, considering he had disappeared, leaving me and our newborn daughter behind. But I couldn't bring myself to ruin my friend's wedding, so I decided to hold back at that moment. Later, I whispered to Hannah, who seemed eager to find out more. I have a favor to ask. What is it? Tell me anything. I want to know what Mike has been up to during these missing 5 years. Can you help me? She gave me a mischievous grin and showed a thumbs up. Of course. I was planning to look into it even without your asking. I'm counting on you. The very next day, Hannah and I began investigating Mike. She even took time off work to follow him around. As we dug deeper, we stumbled upon a shocking truth. I can't believe Mike was such a person. I was deeply shocked, almost collapsing from the revelation. I understand you're shocked, but now that we know everything, we can't let this go, can we? Of course not. There's no way I would let it end like this. With that, we decided to take action against Mike. A few days later, we attended a party to unveil Mona's husband, Mike, which we had managed to get invitations to by a certain method. As we searched for Mike among the crowd in the vast venue, we found him at the center of a particularly large gathering. There he is, Mia. What do we do? There are so many people, and it seems like he's completely surrounded. Then we have no choice but to go straight through. What? Straight through, wait, Mia? Ignoring Hannah's attempts to stop me, I clicked my heels and stepped forward, reducing the distance between Mike and myself. As I entered Mike's line of sight, he looked at me in surprise and froze. As I approached with a smile, Mona noticed and said, Mia. Thank you for coming today. You're welcome. It's been a while, Mike. As I smiled brightly at him, his previously cheerful face suddenly tensed up. Mike. Why are you here? Weren't you supposed to have jumped off a cliff? I raised my voice, feigning surprise, and felt the eyes of the people around us turning towards us. Mona also pressed him. What's the meaning of this, Mike? You know Mia? No, that is, Caught off guard by the sudden turn of events, Mike started to panic visibly. Mona, it might be hard to believe, but hear me out. This man, Mike, was supposed to be my fiancé up until 5 years ago. When Mona grabbed his chest and shook him violently, asking, what's the meaning of this, Mike, his eyes darted back and forth in shock. Then, I revealed everything about what happened 5 years ago, loud enough for everyone around to hear. He disappeared the day after I had our child, leaving behind a suicide note and supposedly throwing himself off a cliff. Since then, I've been living my life to the fullest. The murmuring in the room died down as everyone focused on my words. But if Mike is alive like this, it means that suicide note was just for show, right? I stood in front of him, pointing my finger. The reason you abandoned us was to marry Mona. Mike averted his gaze, his face turning pale. Whispers of why would you go that far started to emerge from the crowd. Mona glared at him too. You were dating both of us at the same time, and when I got pregnant, you decided you didn't want to take responsibility and ran away, right? You actually wanted to marry into Mona's wealth. That is... Mike, pale as a ghost, seemed desperately searching for a way to turn the situation around, but when Mona's father showed up, he just sat down and buried his head in his hands. I went on to expose more of his secrets. Moreover, it seems you have debts from gambling since the time we were together, amounting to over $50,000? As Mona confronted him, saying, I haven't heard anything about this. Mike began to panic. I was going to tell you someday. It's true. I had a plan to pay it all back, so I thought I'd tell you after I've repaid everything. Was that plan to marry Mona and become a CEO? At my accusation, Mike fell silent, then stared at me with a fierce look. You were bragging about it when you were drunk at a bar 5 years ago, boasting about playing us both and how if things went well, you might end up marrying into wealth and becoming a CEO. And you never intended to marry me. All the testimonies that I couldn't gather myself were collected by the detective, Hannah. I thrust the investigation report right under his nose. Then, as if defiant, Mike snatched the report from me and started tearing it up. You don't think you can do this and get away with it. Being with you was a mistake. If only you hadn't gotten pregnant. His plans in ruins, he looked ready to leap at me any moment. I will indeed sue you for alimony and child support through a lawyer, so be prepared. It's all right for you to come out when it's time to face the consequences. This wasn't supposed to happen. Everything was going so well until now. Mike, pounding the floor with his fists, looked frustrated, while Mona slowly approached him and declared, "That's my line." It turns out it was all true. Just as Mia said. No, wait a minute. This is all her lies. Mike was making excuses, clinging to Mona, but her decision was unshakable. And rightly so, since Hannah and I had already met with Mona beforehand and told her the truth. That's why she was the one who sent the invitation today. As Mike reached for her hand, Mona stood beside Hannah and me, giving Mike a cold look. That's impossible. Mona, please reconsider. Afterwards, Mike was apologizing to her, crying, but after being sternly reprimanded by Mona's father, he finally calmed down. Moreover, Mike, who had been working at Mona's company, was given a direct termination notice from the CEO and lost everything. It's all Mia's fault I can't become the CEO. Huh? This is the result of your own actions. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm also the daughter of a CEO. What? You? He was stunned by the sudden revelation. Actually, my father also ran a business, and he hoped to eventually pass it on to either me or my future husband. Because of this, he always pressured me to marry and was very vocal about how it would look bad socially if I didn't. I got pregnant early and became estranged from my parents, so I never got the chance to tell them. But well, things turned out for the best in the end. So, if I had married you, I could have been the president of the company. Suddenly, Mike grabbed my hand and knelt down. Let's start over, even now. A child really needs a father, don't they? Ahahaha. No way. Sorry, but I can't imagine someone like you being a father. I don't ever want to see your face again. Mike, shocked by my sudden outburst, was at a loss for words and stood there dazed. Leaving him behind, Mona, Hannah, and I left the venue together. Afterwards, Mona and Mike got a divorce. Her father was furious and vowed to use any means necessary to claim alimony. I also filed for alimony and child support through a lawyer. Mike ended up with a debt of over $150,000, working day and night without rest, and looked completely worn out. And now, I spend wonderful times having lunch and gathering frequently with Mona and Hannah. Moreover, I turned 40 and managed to fulfill my dream of owning my own store. Lately, my 5-year-old daughter has started showing interest in nail art, and we play pretend nail salon together. In those moments, with my beloved daughter's smile never fading, I feel the sheer joy of being alive, enveloped in a peaceful mood.